The November rain hammered against the windshield of the unmarked sedan as Detective Marcus Hayes adjusted his position in the driver's seat. His knees ached from sitting in the cramped space for 6 hours, watching the decrepit warehouse across the street in Chicago's industrial district. The area had seen better days, decades ago. Now it was a graveyard of rusted metal and broken dreams, the perfect place for people who preferred to operate in the shadows. Marcus took another sip of cold coffee and grimaced. At 42 years old, he had spent nearly 2 decades on the force, working his way up from beat cop to detective in the organized crime division. His dark hair was streaked with gray at the temples, and the lines around his eyes told stories of too many sleepless nights and cases that haunted him long after they were closed. His partner, Detective Sarah Chen, had wanted to come along tonight, but Marcus convinced her to stay home. Her daughter had a school recital, and he knew Sarah had already missed too many family moments because of this job. Besides, this was supposed to be a simple surveillance operation. Watch, observe, report. Nothing more. The warehouse belonged to a shipping company that had gone bankrupt 3 years ago. Since then, it had changed hands twice on paper, each time purchased by shell corporations that Marcus had traced back to the Castellano family. Vincent Castellano ran the most sophisticated criminal organization in Chicago, with operations spanning from the docks to downtown, from construction to waste management. The family had their hands in everything, yet they remained untouchable. Vincent was smart, careful, and surrounded himself with lawyers who could make evidence disappear faster than it could be collected. Marcus had been investigating the Castellanos for 18 months, ever since a confidential informant whispered about a major drug distribution network operating out of the old industrial district. The informant, a low-level dealer named Tommy Ricci, had promised hard evidence in exchange for witness protection. 2 days later, Tommy's body was found in the Chicago River. The case went cold, but Marcus never forgot. Tonight might change everything. Marcus had received an anonymous tip 3 days ago, a burner phone with a single text message containing this address and tonight's date. It could be a trap. It probably was a trap. But 18 months of dead ends and bureaucratic obstacles had made Marcus desperate. He needed something concrete, something his captain couldn't ignore, something that would finally bring the Castellanos down. At 11:45, a black SUV pulled up to the warehouse's side entrance. Marcus grabbed his camera and started shooting photos through the rain-streaked window. 2 men stepped out, their faces obscured by the darkness and precipitation. They moved with the casual confidence of people who owned the night. One of them unlocked the heavy steel door, and both disappeared inside. Marcus checked his watch. This was it. He radioed dispatch with his location and intention to investigate. The response crackled back. Backup was 20 minutes away. 20 minutes in this neighborhood might as well be 20 hours. Marcus knew he should wait. Every training manual, every protocol, every instinct honed by 2 decades of police work told him to sit tight and wait for backup. But something pulled him forward. Maybe it was the memory of Tommy Ricci's lifeless eyes staring up from a morgue slab. Maybe it was the frustration of watching criminals operate with impunity while good people suffered. Maybe it was just stubborn pride. Whatever it was, Marcus found himself stepping out of the car into the freezing rain. The November wind cut through his jacket as he crossed the empty street. The warehouse loomed before him, a monolith of corrugated steel and shattered windows. Marcus kept his hand on his service weapon as he approached the building. The side door the men had entered was slightly ajar, light spilling out into the rain-soaked alley. He pressed himself against the cold metal wall and listened. Voices drifted from inside, muffled but distinct. At least 3 men, maybe more. Marcus peered through the gap in the door. The interior was vast and dimly lit by hanging industrial lights. Shipping containers were stacked along the walls, and in the center of the space, several wooden crates sat open. Even from this distance, Marcus could see the distinctive bundles, kilos of what he assumed was heroin or cocaine, enough to flood the streets of Chicago for months. His heart pounded as he pulled out his phone to take photos. This was the evidence he needed. This would be enough for search warrants, arrests, maybe even to get one of these guys to flip on Vincent Castellano himself. Marcus's finger pressed the camera button repeatedly, capturing every angle he could manage from his position. Then the floorboard beneath him creaked. The voices inside stopped instantly. Marcus froze, but it was too late. The door burst open, and a massive hand grabbed his collar, yanking him inside with brutal force. Marcus stumbled forward, reaching for his weapon, but another man was already there, striking his wrist with something hard. The gun clattered across the concrete floor. There were 4 of them. Marcus recognized one, Anthony Castellano, Vincent's younger brother, a man known for his volcanic temper and appetite for violence. Anthony's face split into a cruel smile as he recognized the detective. "Well, well, Detective Hayes, you're pretty far from your jurisdiction, aren't you?" Anthony's voice was smooth, almost friendly, which made it more terrifying. "And all alone. That's not very smart." Marcus tried to back toward the door, but the other men had already circled him. His mind raced through options. Backup was still at least 15 minutes away. His weapon was across the room. The radio on his belt might as well be on the moon. "I've already called this in," Marcus said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "There are units on the way right now. You let me walk out of here, and maybe we can all pretend this never happened." Anthony laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You think we're stupid? We've been monitoring police frequencies all night. Nobody's coming for you. Detective, nobody even knows you're here." Marcus's stomach dropped. They had been waiting for him. This whole thing, the anonymous tip, the convenient timing, it had all been designed to lure him here alone, and he had walked right into it like a rookie. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "You've been a problem for a long time, Hayes," Anthony said, pulling out a pistol from his jacket. "Always digging where you don't belong, always asking questions, always making our lives difficult. My brother, he's patient. He thinks we should handle things carefully, legally. But me, I'm tired of watching you sniff around our business." The other men closed in. Marcus launched himself at the nearest one, landing a solid punch before someone grabbed him from behind. A fist connected with his ribs, then another. Marcus fought back with everything he had, 2 decades of training and desperation fueling his movements. He managed to break free momentarily, running toward where his gun had fallen. But Anthony was faster. The first bullet caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around. The pain was immediate and blinding. The second shot hit his abdomen, and Marcus felt his legs give out. He crashed to the concrete floor, his own blood spreading beneath him in a dark pool. Anthony stood over him, the gun pointed at Marcus's head. "This is what happens when you don't know your place, detective. Say hello to Tommy Ricci for me." As Anthony's finger tightened on the trigger, a voice cut through the warehouse like a blade. "Stop!" Everyone turned. Vincent Castellano stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. Where Anthony was all rage and muscle, Vincent was composed and calculating. At 45, he carried himself with the bearing of a CEO, which in many ways he was. His dark eyes swept the scene, taking in everything in seconds. "What are you doing, Anthony?" Vincent's voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. "Cleaning up a problem," Anthony replied, not lowering the gun. "This cop has been harassing us for months. He broke into our property, self-defense." Vincent walked closer, his polished shoes clicking on the concrete. He looked down at Marcus, who was struggling to breathe, each inhale sending agony through his perforated lung. "Put the gun away," Vincent said. "But now, Anthony." Reluctantly, Anthony lowered the weapon. Vincent knelt beside Marcus, studying him with an expression that was impossible to read. Marcus tried to speak, to plead, to threaten, but only blood came from his lips. Vincent stood and pulled out his phone. For a moment, Marcus thought he was calling someone to finish the job. Instead, Vincent's words shocked everyone in the room. "This is Vincent Castellano. I'm at Warehouse 7 in the Industrial District. There's a police officer here who's been shot. He needs an ambulance immediately. Yes, I'll stay until they arrive." Anthony stared at his brother in disbelief. "What are you doing? Are you insane?" Vincent's eyes were cold as he looked at his brother. "Get everyone out of here. Move everything. Clean this place. You have 10 minutes before emergency services arrive." "You're going to save a cop?" Anthony's voice rose with incredulity. "After everything he's done to—" "I said move, now!" The force in Vincent's voice left no room for argument. The men scrambled, loading the crates into vehicles with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, the warehouse was empty, except for Vincent and the dying detective. Vincent removed his jacket and pressed it against Marcus's wounds, applying pressure. Marcus's vision was fading, darkness creeping in from the edges. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness claimed him was the face of the city's most feared crime boss, the man who was supposed to be his enemy, trying to save his life. The sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Marcus Hayes woke to the antiseptic smell of hospital and the steady beep of machines. Pain radiated through his entire body, focused in his shoulder and abdomen. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the harsh fluorescent lights overhead. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was or how he got there. Then it all came rushing back. The warehouse, the ambush, Anthony Castellano's gun pointed at his head, and Vincent's unexpected intervention. "Easy, Marcus. Don't try to move." Sarah Chen's voice came from beside his bed. His partner looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, and her usually neat hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She gripped his hand gently. "You've been out for 2 days." Marcus tried to speak, but his throat was raw from the intubation tube. Sarah held a cup of water with a straw to his lips, and he took a small sip. The cool liquid was a blessing. "What happened?" he managed to croak out. Sarah's expression darkened. "That's what everyone wants to know. Emergency services found you bleeding out in that warehouse, with Vincent Castellano applying pressure to your wounds. He called it in himself, stayed until the paramedics arrived, then walked away before patrol units showed up. You'd lost so much blood, they weren't sure you'd make it through surgery." Marcus processed this information slowly. "Vincent Castellano saved my life. Apparently, the surgeons removed 2 bullets, one from your shoulder, one from your abdomen. The abdominal shot nicked your liver and collapsed a lung. Another few minutes and you would have bled out." Sarah's voice wavered with emotion. "What were you thinking, Marcus, going in there alone without backup?" "I thought I had evidence. I thought—" Marcus closed his eyes, shame washing over him. "It was a setup. They were waiting for me. We figured that out. The warehouse was completely clean by the time our people got there. No drugs, no weapons, nothing. Just you and a whole lot of blood." Sarah squeezed his hand. "The captain is furious. Internal Affairs wants a full statement. And the FBI is involved now because Vincent Castellano's 911 call created a media firestorm." Marcus's mind struggled to make sense of it all. Why would he save me? It doesn't make sense. Nobody knows. The media is calling him the Good Samaritan mobster. His lawyers released a statement saying he was checking on a property he owns when he found you and acted as any decent citizen would. Of course, nobody believes that, but there's no proof otherwise. He's already positioned himself as the hero, and you're the reckless cop who got himself shot while trespassing on private property. The door opened, and Captain Robert Morrison entered. The captain was a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s with a perpetual scowl and a reputation for running the tightest ship in the department. He looked at Marcus with a mixture of relief and anger. "Detective Hayes, glad to see you're awake." Morrison's tone suggested he wasn't entirely glad. "We need to talk about what happened at that warehouse." Sarah stood. "Captain, he just woke up. Maybe this can wait." "This can't wait, Chen. The media is having a field day with this. Every newspaper in the city is running stories about how a mob boss showed more humanity than our own department's backup protocols." Morrison pulled up a chair. "So talk to me, Marcus. What the hell were you doing there alone?" Marcus recounted the anonymous tip, his decision to surveil the location, what he saw inside the warehouse, and the ambush. He left nothing out, knowing that lying or omitting details would only make things worse. Morrison listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each sentence. When Marcus finished, Morrison was silent for a long moment. "You violated protocol. You entered a potentially hostile situation without backup, without a warrant, without authorization. You're lucky you're not dead." "I know, sir. And now we have nothing. No evidence, no case, and Vincent Castellano looking like a saint while we look incompetent." Morrison stood and paced the small hospital room. "Internal Affairs is opening an investigation. You're on administrative leave, effective immediately. Once you're medically cleared, there'll be a hearing." Marcus nodded. He had expected this. "I understand. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do." Morrison stopped pacing and looked directly at Marcus. "The Castellano family's lawyers are already making noise about harassment, unlawful surveillance, trespassing. They could file suit against you personally, against the department. And we have no leg to stand on because you went cowboy and blew any legitimate investigation we might have built." The weight of Morrison's words pressed down on Marcus like a physical thing. 18 months of work, destroyed in one reckless decision. After Morrison left, Sarah sat back down beside the bed. "He's right, you know, but he's also worried about you. We all are." "I screwed up." "Sarah, yeah, you did, but you're alive and that's what matters." Sarah hesitated, then continued. "Marcus, there's something else. Vincent Castellano has been trying to contact you." Marcus stared at her. "What?" "He's called the hospital 3 times. Sent flowers to your room. I had them removed. His lawyer left a message saying Mr. Castellano wishes to speak with you personally about the incident. The captain ordered us to block all communication, but I thought you should know." "Why would he want to talk to me?" "That's the million-dollar question." Sarah leaned forward. "Marcus, I've been digging into Vincent Castellano's background. Did you know he has a degree in economics from Northwestern? That before his father died and he took over the family business, he was on track to work in legitimate finance. He's not like his brother Anthony. Vincent is calculating, strategic. Everything he does has a purpose." "So, what's his purpose in saving me?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's not altruism. Men like Vincent Castellano don't do anything without expecting something in return." Over the next few days, Marcus remained in the hospital, recovering from his injuries. The wound in his shoulder would heal with physical therapy, but the abdominal injury was more serious. The doctors talked about infection risks, potential complications, months of recovery. Marcus listened to it all with a growing sense of despair. His career was likely over, his body was broken, and the man he'd spent 18 months trying to bring down was being hailed as a hero. The media coverage was relentless. Every news channel ran stories about the shooting. Reporters camped outside the hospital, trying to get statements from anyone connected to the case. The narrative had been set. Reckless detective versus responsible businessman who happened to have a questionable family history. On his 4th day in the hospital, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. A well-dressed woman in her 30s entered his room, carrying a briefcase, and wearing an expression of professional courtesy. "Detective Hayes, my name is Catherine Brennan. I'm an attorney representing Vincent Castellano." She handed him a business card. "My client would like to meet with you privately to discuss the events of November 15th. "Your client should talk to his own lawyers about not contacting victims," Marcus replied coldly. "You're not a victim, detective. You trespassed on private property and were shot by unknown assailants. Mr. Castellano was a witness who rendered aid. Those are the facts as the law sees them." Catherine's voice was pleasant but firm. "He simply wants to talk. No recording devices, no lawyers present except me, nothing official, just a conversation." "And if I refuse?" "That's your right, of course. But Mr. Castellano saved your life. The least you could do is hear what he has to say." Catherine pulled out a document from her briefcase. "He's also prepared to sign this affidavit stating that he witnessed Anthony Castellano and 3 other men assault you. He's willing to testify against his own brother." Marcus felt like he'd been punched again. "What?" "You heard me correctly. Vincent is willing to give you Anthony on assault with intent to kill, provided certain conditions are met. But he'll only discuss those conditions with you face to face." Marcus's mind raced. Vincent Castellano willing to turn on his own brother? It made no sense. Unless Sarah was right, and this was all part of some larger strategy that Marcus couldn't see yet. "When?" Marcus asked. "Tomorrow evening. A neutral location. You can bring Detective Chen if it makes you comfortable. But no recording devices, no wires. Just talk." Every instinct told Marcus this was a terrible idea. Getting involved with Vincent Castellano, even as a witness, was dangerous. But the chance to finally get something on the Castellanos, even if it was just Anthony, was too tempting to ignore. "I'll think about it," Marcus said. Catherine smiled. "My client said you'd say that. He also said to tell you that you're not the only one who wants justice, detective. Sometimes it just comes from unexpected places." After Catherine left, Marcus lay in his hospital bed staring at the ceiling. His body ached, his career was in shambles, and now the city's most powerful crime boss wanted to make a deal. The reasonable thing would be to refuse, to report this contact to his superiors, to let the system handle it. But Marcus had learned that the system was broken. Tommy Ricci had trusted the system and ended up in the river. Marcus had followed protocol for 18 months and had nothing to show for it but bullets in his body. Maybe it was time to try a different approach, even if that approach wore expensive suits and had blood on its hands. Marcus reached for his phone and called Sarah. When she answered, he said simply, "We need to talk about Vincent Castellano." The game had changed, and Marcus was about to cross a line he never thought he would. The restaurant was called Giordano's, a small Italian place in Lincoln Park that had been serving the neighborhood for 40 years. It was the kind of establishment where regulars sat at the same tables every week, where the owner knew your name and your order, where the pasta was handmade and the wine list was carefully curated. Marcus had never been there before, but as he and Sarah entered through the heavy wooden door, he understood why Vincent had chosen it. The restaurant was closed for a private event. That event, apparently, was their meeting. An elderly man in a pristine white shirt and black vest greeted them at the door. "Detective Hayes, Detective Chen. Mr. Castellano is waiting in the back room. Please follow me." They walked through the empty dining room, past tables set with white linens and fresh flowers. The smell of garlic and tomatoes filled the air. At the back of the restaurant, the host opened a door to a private room where Vincent Castellano sat alone at a table set for 4. Vincent stood as they entered. He wore a charcoal grey suit with no tie, looking more like a successful attorney than a crime boss. His dark eyes assessed them both before he gestured to the empty chairs. "Detective Hayes, thank you for coming. And Detective Chen, welcome. Please, sit." Marcus remained standing, his hand instinctively moving toward where his service weapon would normally be, but he wasn't carrying tonight. That had been one of Catherine Brennan's conditions. Sarah stood beside him, her posture tense and alert. "This is quite the setup," Marcus said. "Private restaurant, no witnesses, no records. How much did this cost you?" Vincent's expression didn't change. "Giuseppe, the owner, is an old family friend. When I explained that I needed privacy for a sensitive conversation, he was happy to accommodate. Please sit. The food here is excellent, and we have much to discuss." Reluctantly, Marcus and Sarah took their seats across from Vincent. The fourth chair, Marcus noticed, remained empty. Catherine Brennan sat at a small table in the corner, close enough to intervene if needed, but far enough to provide the illusion of privacy. "You wanted to talk," Marcus said. "So talk. Direct. I appreciate that." Vincent poured red wine into 3 glasses from a bottle that had already been opened and breathing. "First, I want to explain why I saved your life." "I'm listening." "My brother Anthony is a problem. He's violent, impulsive, and increasingly reckless. He's also my brother, which complicates matters." Vincent took a sip of wine. "When I received a call that Anthony was planning to lure a police detective to that warehouse, I knew I had to intervene." Sarah leaned forward. "You knew it was a setup. You knew Marcus was walking into an ambush." "I knew Anthony had arranged something, yes. I didn't know the specifics until I arrived and found him standing over Detective Hayes with a gun." Vincent's voice remained calm, almost conversational. "In my business, family loyalty is everything, but there are lines that cannot be crossed, even for family. Murdering a police officer in cold blood is one of those lines." Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. "You expect me to believe you have moral standards. You run drugs through this city. You control half the construction unions. You've ordered—" "I've never ordered anyone's death," Vincent interrupted sharply. "That's Anthony's style, not mine. I'm a businessman, detective. Violence is bad for business. It attracts attention, destabilizes operations, creates unnecessary risk. Anthony doesn't understand that, which is why he's become a liability. So this is about protecting your business, not saving my life. Those two things happen to align, yes. I saved you because letting Anthony murder you would have brought scrutiny on my operations that I can't afford. But I also saved you because despite what you think of me, I'm not a monster." Vincent set down his wineglass. "You've been investigating my family for 18 months. You know our operations better than most of my own people. You're thorough, intelligent, and dedicated. Those are qualities I respect." The elderly host entered with plates of antipasto, prosciutto, fresh mozzarella, roasted peppers, olives. He set them down silently and disappeared. "Your lawyer said you'd testify against Anthony," Marcus said, ignoring the food. "What's the catch?"